Okay, so back I am. I've been struggling quite a bit, and I have fortunately been able to figure out what was wrong, and it was CHAR all along. So we are gonna have a look at what was happening. I also figured out there was a little bug with the stream, so I'm just gonna take it back from where I stopped or where I failed to switch back to Visual Studio Code, and we are gonna try to understand what's going on and what worked and what didn't. Um, so I'm gonna make clean. We're gonna see a lot of things have changed. Let's clean up our mess a little bit. So if you can recall correctly, there were still stuff about the Fibonacci sequence, which we actually don't need anymore. Here we are. Let's just, there you go. That would be ToLower. Here I defined a Fibonacci sequence, which I don't use anymore because I'm concerned with everything that is lowercase involved. Basically, I'm gonna just stop everything. That can also be removed. That can also be removed. There you go. And let's go back to the bencher and remove the Fibonacci related things. As you can see, quite a lot of things have changed so far, and that's because, yeah, I struggled quite a lot to figure out how to write this ToLower in Rust and why it would not do what's expected. So first of all, I'm going to get back to the lib and see if it compiles. Cargo check, cargo test, tests are running. So there does not seem to be anything related to the Fibonacci sequence anymore. Make clean, make test. Oh, there's still something. In test.cpp, I'm still trying to do stuff with the Fibonacci sequence, which is totally fair, to be honest. Let's try that again. Okay, and make bench. How does make bench behave? Awesome. So I'm gonna try to show you what exactly happened and why it happened, which is pretty hard. So the first thing I wanted to do was to have a ToLower function, which is here, and that basically does the same as that. If you haven't seen it yet, maybe you want to check out the last video in which I kind of try to rewrite the ToLower in Rust, and we were trying to benchmark it and to test it basically. So once we were done with that, we actually tried to write a ToLower function, which is this one. And we even gave it, we were at the point where we wanted to actually give it a FFI name. So we wanted to be able to invoke the method, and it was supposed to take a reference to a char, and there's nothing with a usize. That's for later. You'll figure it out on your own. So basically, we were invoking ToLower that would actually invoke Rust ToLower, and something very interesting happened when I was trying to invoke that. Let's try to see that, if we can see it. So it is a mutable reference. So I just actually need to call it. It's supposed to be a mutable reference, so that should be fine. And I was like, why not? I'm just going to pass it a reference. It's going to mutate it, and everything is going to be fine. The truth is, that's not what happened. So let's try to write a test and see what happens. So I'm going back to my test.cpp. This is a ToLower test, and I was writing ToLower Rust ToLower tests, if you can remember. The Rust ToLower tests are the exact same as the ToLower tests, except that they actually call the Rustlang version. So the Rustlang version I have defined in cpp.h are in CPP, in the rear.h are supposed to be something like void to lower. And it's going to take a mutable reference and it's a void. So basically that's it. I'm going to try to see if that's exactly the way I declared it. It's a void. It takes a mutable reference. Well, it's going to be almost fine, I suppose. Let's go back to the test and invoke ToLower instead of, let's try to invoke the Rustlang ToLower and see what happens. ToLower test, that's not supposed to be, okay. And I am missing one more. Okay, that's supposed to be okay. I'm gonna make clean, make test, and try to see what happens. Errors. Okay, so the first error here is that I am supposed to pass in a reference to a character. I don't know if I can do it like this. I'm gonna try it, but I'm not really sure it's gonna work. Let's try that. I'm not sure it's gonna work. All right, it works. It works, but there's a teeny tiny problem, which is something I've been struggling with for quite a long time, which is the fact that it doesn't mutate. As you can see here, I was expecting the uppercase to become lowercase, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work. And as you can see, all the other tests are passing because if we already give a lowercase, it's not being mutated, so it actually works. And if you give it something that's not an uppercase character, it just returns. So it seems to work except for the behavior of the uppercase character. And I've been struggling quite a lot and actually asking, going to forums, trying to figure out exactly what happens. There's a lot of documentation with respect to strings and C strings and these kind of things. And thanks to the community and a couple of friends, I asked them directly. And Merlin and Elisa, which you have probably already heard of, if you haven't, go ahead and check their blogs and talks because they are doing an amazing job and they know a lot of things. I'll just put some links in the show notes, probably. And yeah, I told them about what's going on, and they told me about the types, basically the C string and the character. So the deal with the C string and characters is exactly that. If you have a look at the documentation for C-char, you see that this is a type that is equivalent to C's char type. And then it tells you that the Rustling char type and the C char type have nothing to do with each other. It's like a C char type is an integer, which is going to be an I8 or U8 depending on the platform. And in Rust, there's quite a lot going on behind the scene for a char. There are things involved with UTF-8, making sure that the string is terminated and this kind of stuff. And basically, you cannot cast a C character into a char as easily as I thought it would. So that's what happened. We are actually going to try to figure that out on our own, but I've made a couple of tests since then, and it seems to behave the way I expected. So here's what's going on. This here is basically wrong. I don't have a reference to a char. I have a pointer to a C char. And this C char is being represented by either an I8 or a U8. And I'm gonna show you that in my IDE right now. Here you go. So this here is supposed to be a C chart. It was a reference to a chart. I'm gonna show you that again, C chart. So this is a bit better. It's a bit better, but I cannot use it like that because the Rust ToLower takes a mutable reference to a chart. So what we are going to do here is cast it into a U8 because that's what's written in the documentation that behind the scene it's supposed to be an I8 or a U8. So let's try that. Let's try that. We are gonna see as mod U8. I don't think it's gonna work, but let's try that anyway. I'm probably gonna have to cast it. Yeah, you see. So there are several ways we can try to cast things. I suppose there might be a way for me to try to do that without using an unsafe block. I'm gonna try it. Let's try to cast that C chart into something else. Yeah, it says that it's not a primitive cast. I'm not sure I can just cast it this way. Why can't I do that? Well, an integer, an I8, might have negative values. So that means if I cast it into a U8, it's not looking good at all for all the values. What if the value is negative? Well, it turns out that since we are handling characters, we know there is no negative value. So that's basically something that we are supposed to be able to do. So let's try to figure out how we can actually mutate this. All right. There's something that I'm thinking of right now, which is transmuting. Transmuting is an unsafe operation that just basically allows you to cast things around, but it's unsafe. That's something you want to avoid. So there might be something else we can do. Let's have a look at the documentation. Mem transmute. So this is the transmute documentation. Basically, it's telling you that you can change invariants. So that's why it's unsafe. You can change the type, you can change the lifetime. There's something else that you can do. You are being warned that it's unsafe and it might be an invalid value. And there are a few things that transmute is useful for, but you are not supposed to do that. You want to avoid that as much as possible. For example, there are a lot of alternatives, like where you want to do something that seems to be a transmute, but you can just achieve it somehow. So for example, here, there's an unsafe transmute from a reference to an I32 to a usize. Basically, you can do it in another way. That's why I've been trying to use as much as I can, like here. So there seemed to be a way for me to reborrow or to transmute stuff around without having to use the mem transmute. Let's try that maybe. Okay, so here I'm having something like an unsafe pointer to as C chart, which is supposed to be an I8, and I'm trying to mutate it into a U8. How does that go? Oh, I think I got lucky. I'm not really sure it works, but I think I got lucky. So what I'm doing here basically is that I'm just casting the value into a reference to a U8. So it seems to be working, but there's only one way to find it out. So the Rust ToLower is now complaining here because I was giving it a reference to a character, and now I need a reference to a U8. I think there's a way for me to cut through this, like by telling it that it's a binary string. Does that work? It seems to. Here it's complaining because the other one is not a U8 but a char. Let's do that again. Backslash null. Um, yeah, and those are both. Oh, that's just supposed to be a character. So that, okay, that's supposed to be that. And that's supposed to be that, I suppose. Let's try that. Okay, still complaining, but complaining at other parts of the code base. So I suppose it's going to work. Let's slap a B in front of it to tell it that it's a binary string, and slap a B here to tell it that's a binary string again. Okay, looks better. Looks better, looks better. And there's a couple of things that I've forgotten. So the rustlang tests are still passing, and the C++ tests are not passing anymore. So what I want to do right now is just go all the way back to the C++ code until I have something that actually works. So here, oh, that's cpp.h. I don't really care about cpp.h. I'm going back to the test. Here, it's complaining, make clean, make test. All right. Oh, test are passing. I should have cleaned before. So I don't know if you understand exactly what happened, but it has to do with alignment and this kind of thing. So basically, there are several different types which are not represented the same way. Rust is trying to handle those types as best as it can, but if it cannot, it just can't. So I was not able to mutate the strings the way I was supposed to. There's one thing we can try to do now is to add this to the bencher. So we are keeping this for later. I'm just gonna copy and paste it. String, and I'm gonna add string to here. Okay, so basically what I'm gonna do is have a pointer to a character, C equals, I think we have used C so far, so I'm just gonna keep it with C. And I'm gonna try to call ToLower with C, okay? And the rustlang version would be, well, almost the same. I'm gonna do it like that. And the rustlang version is gonna be, well, it's basically gonna be the same. How did I call that? I think I called it ToLower. Yeah, I called it ToLower. So I'm gonna call act ToLower. And I'm gonna register Rust ToLowerCase and CPP ToLowerCase to the benchmark. Okay, let's make clean, make bench, and it's probably not gonna compile. Yeah, it's not. It's not because I need a reference to it. If I recall correctly, is it gonna work? No, it's not. I think that's the opposite. Let's try that. Nope. Is it gonna work? No, it's not. I really need to. I'll just have a look at the test because the tests are correct. Char C equals 1, ToLower with C. Char C equals 1, ToLower with a reference to C. So that was actually good. I don't understand what's going on. Let's try to figure it out. Make clean and make bench. It doesn't want to. It doesn't want to. How? Why? Make clean. Let's see if the make test works. It actually works. So there must be something I'm missing here. Char C equals 1, ToLower C. Char C equals 1, ToLower C. Char C equals C, ToLower C. That's pretty weird because I don't have the same interface. on both sides. So I might wanna have a look at it later. So the tests are passing, the bencher is not. And why? What is it saying? It's saying there's an invalid conversion from char to char star. And it's saying in the Rust ToLower case. So I think that's it. Yeah, it's working. So here, the problem is the API is not the exact same because I've been using ToLower with a reference to char, and now I'm using ToLower. Let's try to see if it's possible for me to change that. I want to have the exact same API on both sides. So I just changed the definition. And now I need ToLower. That's supposed to be okay. Oh, that's because of the, no, that's not. Okay, let's try that. Let me test. It's not working. And it's not working because there's an invalid conversion. I don't know where ToLower takes a reference to a character. And the problem is, I want to check if I can basically use a reference here. Make clean, make test. Nope, I can't. Looks really bad. It's void ToLower, bind R value and stuff. That's something that's not looking good at all. Here's the test. Oh, I have actually not made it everywhere. No, it's not working. It's not working because, oh, it's actually not working, but somewhere else. So that's fine. And by that's fine, I mean, that's another part of the code that will need to be figured out later. Okay, the test pass, make bench, and the benchmarks are passing. Obviously, there's something wrong with the benchmarks here, but it's not too much of an issue right now. We wanted to make sure that uh, the function behaves in the correct way. It somehow seems to be more efficient on the Rust side. I would not trust these benchmarks right now because the operations we are performing are so small that any benchmark would actually do. I'm not really sure that the Rustlang version is more efficient. So I'm going to sum it up. What we have done is use cchart instead of the Rustlang the Rustlang chart type, because that allows us to interoperate with the C and C++ code. And we are pretty lucky that there's a make ASCII lowercase function for chars as well as for U8s. So that has actually allowed us to use the function and to have the lowercase version of it. So basically, if I wanted to submit a pull request to the Firefox code base saying that I just replaced the ToLower method, that's how I would go about it. I would write the tests, make sure that they pass, and then I would try to rewrite it in Rust, test it, benchmark it, document it, because I would definitely have to talk about the C chart type and why I'm using it. And I would also have to document the unsafe here. And there's a couple of things that need to be checked about the pointer here, because if it's null, then we are definitely going to run into trouble. That's something I'm going to talk about later, probably. One last thing I wanted to show you is the net to lowercase part. Let's have a look at the net to lowercase from the actual Firefox codebase. The net to lowercase here takes a pointer to the beginning of the string and the length, and it basically calls ToLower as long as we haven't reached the, that's not the end of the string, but we are going to iterate through from the pointer through the string as long as length is above 0. So we are gonna have a look at the string and try to make each character to lower. So this is the API. It starts with a pointer to a string and a length, and it just iterates through it. So this here is basically the Rust version of it. And it goes like this. We are gonna need a slice in order to make it ASCII lowercase. So I am using another unsafe function which creates a slice from raw parts. It actually takes a pointer, a length, and creates the slice. There are many things that need to be checked for. For example, the fact that length is valid, that the pointer is valid, and there are so many ways this can go wrong, which I'm going to have a look at later, but this is definitely not the way I want to submit the pull request. I want to make sure that the pointer is correct, that the invariants are being held and this kind of stuff, okay? And once it is done, I am doing what is written in C++. I am iterating through the slice and replacing everything, each character with its ASCII lowercase part, which is what you are seeing here. It's pretty weird because I am not using make ASCII lowercase, but I'm actually using to ASCII lowercase because I want to index it, I want to apply it. So to ASCII lowercase returns the value, as you can see in the definition, it returns an integer, a U8, and make ASCII lowercase returns nothing. It actually mutates things. So if I wanted to write it the same way as they did in C++, I would have probably written something like this for yeah, I would have basically called the ToLower function that we have used, something like Rust ToLower. And there's a scchar. So I think I would have even called external Rust ToLower. Yeah, so that's what it looks like the most, I suppose. There's like slice of n is supposed to be, oh no, I need something to be mutable. So you see the Rust ToLower here does not return anything. So it's actually going to take the mutable. I don't know if I can do that. Let's try that. So here I am trying to mutate, yeah, slice of n, and I need to cast it, I suppose. So it's basically what's going on here. So what I'm trying to do here is iterate through each character in the string and pass it to external Rust ToLower, which is gonna mutate it. So it's gonna change it basically. We can, I suppose we could try it. I don't really know how. Maybe I should unsave cast it. That's not very convenient. Let's keep it as it was. I'm gonna probably refactor it later anyways. Rust ToLower, no, that's not Rust ToLower. I need something like this. So for each character in the slice, let's cast it as a U8 and make it lowercase. And once we have made it lowercase, we are casting back into a character and putting it back into the string, okay? So we are gonna have a look at the definition, which is here. So the no mangle here is we are building a function that is named net to lowercase, which takes a string pointer, which is actually a char pointer, I suppose, and a length, which is the length of the string, which is going to iterate through it. And once it is declared here, I can declare it in the .h file, which is net to lowercase. It takes a reference, it takes a pointer to a string and the length. And once I have this, I can jump over to the C++ part, which includes RIIR, and then I can write some tests just calling ToLower. That's not ToLower, that's ToLower case. Here you go. And I've made a very simple test with a hello world with lower and uppercase and asserting that the lowercase variant is actually coming out. So I'm gonna make clean, I'm gonna make test, and we're just gonna have a look at it and make sure, yeah, invalid character, that's Rust to lower, that's to lowercase hello world. It works, okay? We might want to add more tests and make sure that it behaves the way we are supposed to. We also want to handle the null pointer, probably the null pointer case. And there's one more thing that I want to do, which is the last part, is to actually try to bench it. How can I bench it? Well, there are several ways we can bench it. We can bench it on the rustling side by copy pasting again. That's not convenient. I need to find a better way to do that. We can copy paste it again and put it here in the benchmark. But the thing is, I want to actually compare the C++ performance with the Rustling performance while C++ calls it from the FFI. So what I want to do is directly hop into the bencher and try to see what's happening and how can I compare that. So I'm going to build the hello world string again, and I'm gonna add the benchmarks to it. So Rust to lowercase, let's keep the Rustling version first. Okay, so let's make clean, make bench, and see what happens. All right, so obviously there's something pretty weird going on. I don't really understand why the Rustling version is supposed to be faster. This is definitely something that we want to have a look at. And maybe it would be the correct time to talk a bit more about debugging, about profiling, and how disassembly works, for example, and how we can actually try to understand what's going on in the code. But for now, I suppose that's pretty much it for this episode. We are probably gonna want to keep on refactoring the rest of the miscellaneous functions which are here. So basically, we have been able to rewrite ToLower. This ToLower case, this one has not been rewritten yet, which is actually a special case of this one because the strings are supposed to be null terminated. So we can actually build a string from this pointer. And we might as well want to give it a try. That might be the right moment to talk about C-star and this kind of thing. So that will probably be the next episode. And then those are some pretty interesting functions here, like find a character that is in a set in a string. For example, we have the vowels in a set, and we want to check which what is the position of the first vowel in the string. So that's something we can do with find char in set, for example. The find char not in set is the opposite, like find the character that is not in the set, which one is the first character that is not a vowel. And the R version of find char not in set is like the same one, but in reverse. We are going to iterate from right to left, which is sometimes convenient. For example, if you want to trim a string, which ends with white spaces. For example, you want to look at the first character that is not a white space, and you want to trim the string here. So it's going to be a couple of pretty exciting things. I hope to be able to stream about it tomorrow, which is probably going to happen. Until then, I hope you learned a lot. I actually learned a lot myself, especially about the C chart. It's pretty funny to struggle, and it's actually normal. As you can see, I'm a terrible programmer. I need to look up the definitions and the documentation every time, but I can actually work my way through it because I have tests and I can have a look at the documentation, which is why it's important for you to always document the code you write because people are gonna be looking at ways to use it. And you need tests because if you don't have tests, you can just write a huge bunch of code and only to figure out that it does not work as expected. And once you have the huge bunch of code, it's pretty hard to debug it as a whole. So I've built some very simple function. I've been testing them together, and then I've been able to move on. That's how you do the ToLower case for a string, for example. You build one for a character, you make sure it works, and then you call it because you know that this part works. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you. If you have any suggestions, comments, if I said something that is totally inaccurate, which is probably the case, just let me know in the comments or send me something on Twitter, and make sure you can subscribe and share the videos if you want more people to get involved. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon.